Tonight, we're going to talk about something quiet, familiar, and deeply human. A place where people have ended their days for thousands of years. A place that has held warmth in the middle of cold nights and softness after long hours of work. A place that has been closer to the human body than almost anything else in daily life. Tonight, we're talking about the bed, not just as a piece of furniture, not just as a place to sleep, but as a refuge, a small territory set apart from the world. At the end of every day, no matter the century, no matter the country, no matter the language spoken inside the home, people have searched for the same simple thing, a surface where the body can lie down, grow still, and release the weight of being awake. The bed has always been more than wood, cloth, or straw. It has been a boundary, a soft border between effort and rest, between noise and quiet, between the outside world and the small, private world of sleep. If you pause for a moment and notice where you are right now, you may already be in a bed. Maybe you are lying under a blanket, feeling the steady support beneath you. Maybe your head rests on a pillow, your breathing slow, your body heavy in a way that feels safe. That feeling of being held, supported, protected from the ground is one of the oldest comforts in human history, long before modern mattresses, long before soft springs and layered fabrics. People still made places to rest. They did not always look like the beds we know today, but the intention was the same: to lift the body away from the cold earth, to create a small zone of warmth, to separate sleep from the hardness of the world, because sleep has always mattered. Sleep is when the body repairs itself quietly, when muscles loosen, when the mind sorts through the day's memories and lets many of them drift away. And for all of history, people understood, even without science, that sleep needed a place of its own, a place where the body could feel safe enough to let go. The bed became that place. It was not always comfortable. It was not always clean. It was not always private, but it was always intentional. Even the simplest bed, made from little more than straw and cloth, represented effort. Someone gathered materials. Someone arranged them. Someone created a surface that said, without words, "Here you may rest." At night, as darkness settled outside, the bed waited quietly. It did not glow. It did not make noise. It simply existed, patient and still. And when the day's work was done, when tools were set aside, when voices grew softer, when the last light in the room flickered low, people turned toward that waiting place. The bed marked the end of activity, the moment when the body was allowed to be heavy, when the mind was allowed to drift, when nothing more was expected. In many homes across history, the bed was the most important object in the room, more important than a table, more important than chairs, because a table held a meal for a short time, but a bed held a person for hours, night after night. It held them when they were tired, when they were ill, when they were young, when they were old. The bed witnessed more quiet human moments than any other piece of furniture ever could. Think of the final minutes of a long day. The air in the room is cooler now. The sounds of the outside world have softened. A candle may be burning low, its light small and warm. A person sits on the edge of a bed, unlacing shoes, removing heavy clothing, folding fabric slowly in the dim glow. There is a shift in the body during these moments. Shoulders drop, breathing deepens. Movements grow slower, gentler. The bed stands just behind them, a silent promise of stillness. To lie down in a bed is a gesture of trust, It means closing the eyes. It means becoming vulnerable. It means turning away from watchfulness and stepping into the unknown landscape of dreams. And yet, across cultures and centuries, people made this gesture every night because the bed made it possible. It created a small island of security in the darkness. Even in times when homes were simple, when walls were thin and floors were cold, people did what they could to make their beds warmer, softer, more enclosed. They layered materials. They built frames. They added curtains or blankets, all to shape a space where sleep could come more easily. The bed was never only about comfort. It was about protection. A raised bed kept the body away from damp ground and crawling insects. Layers of cloth or straw held warmth close to the skin. Curtains around a bed could block drafts, create privacy, and hold in heat. In cold climates especially, the bed became a kind of shelter within a shelter, a small room inside the room. In this way, the bed mirrored the purpose of the home itself. Just as a house separated people from wind and rain, a bed separated the sleeping body from the chill and hardness of the surrounding space. It was the final layer between the person and the world. And when you think about it, that role has never truly changed. Even now, with insulated houses and central heating, the bed remains the most protected place in the home. Blankets wrap around the body, pillows support the head, mattresses soften the surface below. We still build a small, controlled environment for sleep, just as people did hundreds and thousands of years ago, because sleep asks for safety. Without it, the body stays tense. The mind remains alert. Rest does not come easily. The bed, in its quiet way, tells the body that it is allowed to let go. You can stop now. You can be still. You are safe here. These messages are not spoken aloud, but the body understands them deeply. Across history, the bed has been the place where people have felt most at ease and most vulnerable at the same time. It is where stories were whispered before sleep, where parents leaned over children to smooth blankets, where people lay awake listening to the wind outside, feeling the warmth gathered under layers of cloth. It is where dreams have begun, and dreams too have always mattered. In the quiet of night, lying in a bed, people traveled to places far beyond their small rooms. They met memories, fears, hopes, and strange images shaped by the mind. The bed became the launch point for these inner journeys, a physical anchor while the mind wandered elsewhere. It is difficult to think of any object more closely connected to the inner life of a person. A chair is for sitting. A table is for eating. A door is for entering and leaving. But a bed is for disappearing into sleep and returning again. Every morning, people rise from their beds and step back into the world of light and motion. Every night, they return, lowering themselves into the same quiet space, repeating a cycle older than history itself. And through all of this, the bed has remained patient. It does not hurry the sleeper. It does not demand attention. It simply holds the body night after night, through seasons and years. So tonight, as we begin this journey into the history of the bed, we are not just exploring an object. We are exploring a companion that has stood beside humanity in its most private hours. We are exploring the place where the day ends, where the body grows still, and where the long, gentle quiet of night begins. So settle in. Let your breathing slow. Feel the surface beneath you, steady and supportive, because this is the story of a place that has always been there, waiting at the end of the day, a place to rest, long before beds had frames, before mattresses were layered and sewn, before pillows were shaped to cradle the head. People still slept. They slept under open skies, inside shelters made of branches and hides, in caves where the air was cool and still. Sleep did not wait for furniture to exist. It arrived when the body grew tired, when the light faded, when night slowly covered the world. But even without what we would call a bed, people still shaped the ground beneath them. Because the body, even thousands of years ago, understood the difference between bare earth and a surface made gentler by human hands. Imagine the end of a long day in a very early settlement. The sun has dipped low, and the air carries the quiet that comes after movement. The ground, still holding some warmth from the day, waits in shadow. A person kneels and begins to prepare a place to lie down. First, they clear the surface. Small stones are pushed aside. Twigs and sharp bits of debris are brushed away. The earth beneath is pressed flat by hand or foot, smoothed not perfectly, but enough to feel even beneath the body. Already, this small act creates a boundary. This is not just ground. This is a chosen place to rest. Then come layers, perhaps dry grass gathered earlier, perhaps leaves from nearby trees, still soft but no longer damp, perhaps animal skins, tanned and worn, carrying the faint scent of smoke and earth. These materials are laid down carefully, not in a heap, but spread and arranged. The goal is not luxury. The goal is separation, a thin space between body and soil, a soft buffer between bone and hardness, a surface that feels just different enough to tell the body, this is where you can be still. When a person lies down on such a surface, the experience is not like a modern bed. It is firmer, closer to the ground, more connected to the temperature and texture of the earth itself. But there is still comfort. The grass gives slightly underweight. The skins hold warmth. The smell of natural materials surrounds the sleeper. Dry leaves, faint smoke from a distant fire, the quiet scent of night air. Sleep, in these early times, was deeply tied to the land. The body felt the shape of the ground. It followed the contours beneath it. Shoulders and hips adjusted naturally, finding positions that allowed muscles to loosen. The spine aligned itself with what was available, not with something engineered for perfect support, but with surfaces shaped slowly by human care. And over time, people learned. They learned that certain grasses were softer, that some leaves held moisture and became uncomfortable, that thicker layers kept warmth closer during cold nights. Knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next, not as instruction manuals, but as habits. Lay the skins here, place the grass underneath, sleep with your head slightly raised. These small adjustments were the beginnings of the bed, not as an object, but as an idea, that the body deserved a place prepared just for rest. In caves, the experience was different, yet familiar in intention. Cave floors were often cool, sometimes damp. Sleeping directly on stone could draw warmth from the body quickly, so people created raised layers, using branches, reeds, moss, and skins. Over time, repeated use pressed these materials into shallow nests, shapes molded by many nights of sleep. These early sleeping places were not private. Families or groups rested close together, sharing warmth. The sound of breathing, shifting bodies, the faint crackle of a distant fire. These were the nighttime companions of early humans. Sleep was communal. The ground beneath was shared, but each person still had a small zone of space, a surface shaped by their own body over time. Familiarity mattered. Even in shared sleeping areas, people returned to the same spots where the layers beneath had formed gentle impressions. The body remembers where it has rested before. In open-air camps, sleeping places shifted with seasons. In warmer weather, people might sleep outside, under the sky, on raised beds of grass or woven mats. The night air moved freely. The surface beneath was dry and slightly springy. Stars turned slowly overhead. There is a kind of calm in lying close to the earth. The body feels grounded, literally and quietly. The distance between skin and soil is small, and the warmth of the day lingers for a while beneath you. The sounds of insects, wind through grass, distant animals moving in the dark, all form a soft background to sleep. These early sleeping surfaces were simple, but they were not careless. They represented effort, intention, and a growing understanding of what the body needed at night. Even without frames or cushions, people still shaped their resting places with thought. A thicker layer here, a drier surface there, a slight rise beneath the head. These adjustments made the difference between restless sleep and deeper rest. Over time, in more settled communities, sleeping spaces became more permanent. Inside early huts or houses made of mud, wood, or stone, the ground was still the base, but it was no longer raw earth. Floors might be packed firm, sometimes covered with woven mats, reeds, or layers of straw. Sleeping places were chosen in the warmest corners, away from drafts, close to the hearth. These areas became known by use. Everyone in the household knew where each person slept. The space was familiar, repeated night after night, shaped by routine. Even if the surface was still firm, the mind associated that spot with rest, and that association is powerful. Sleep comes more easily where the body and mind expect it. In some cultures, woven mats became common sleeping surfaces. Made from plant fibers, reeds, or grasses, these mats created a consistent, portable layer between body and ground. Rolled out at night, rolled up during the day, they marked the transition from activity to rest. The act of unrolling a mat was a ritual. It said, "The day is done." And lying on such a mat, the body felt the woven texture beneath it. Firm but slightly flexible, structured yet natural. The surface was not cold stone or loose soil, but something made with care, shaped by hands for a specific purpose. These mats were, in many ways, early beds, flat, simple, but designed for rest. Animal skins also played an important role, softened through use and treatment. Skins provided warmth and a slight cushioning effect. Spread over grass or mats, they held body heat close during cold nights. The texture of fur or hide against skin was familiar, a reminder of the animals that supported human life in so many ways. Sleeping on skins brought the warmth of living creatures into the night. And again, the goal was not luxury. It was insulation, protection, a small improvement in comfort that made sleep deeper and longer. Shared sleeping areas remained common for much of human history. Families slept together not only for warmth, but for safety and connection. The presence of others in the dark, their breathing, their subtle movements, created a sense of security. The night felt less vast when bodies were close. The surface beneath them might still be firm, but the shared warmth made it gentler. In all these early forms of rest, on grass, on skins, on mats, in caves or huts, one idea slowly took root. Sleep deserved preparation. You did not simply collapse where you stood. You made a place, you cleared it, you layered it, you returned to it night after night. This repeated act of preparing a surface for rest is the quiet ancestor of the bed. It began not with wood or fabric, but with attention. Attention to the body's need for softness, attention to warmth, attention to the difference between bare ground and a place shaped by care. Over generations, these habits would lead to raised platforms, wooden frames, and layered mattresses. But the foundation of all those later developments was already present here, in these simple acts of arranging grass, skins, and mats beneath a tired body. Because even before beds existed as objects, people already understood the importance of a place to rest. For a very long time, people slept close to the earth. They layered grass, skins, woven mats, and over generations, they learned how to make those surfaces softer, warmer, more comfortable. But still, the body remained near the ground, feeling its temperature, its dampness, its quiet presence beneath every layer. And slowly, almost without noticing, people began to wonder, what if the body could be lifted just a little higher? Not high above the earth, not far, just enough to change how the night felt. The ground holds many qualities. Some are comforting, the gentle warmth it gathers during the day, the steady support it offers without movement. But the ground also carries cold. It holds moisture long after the sun has disappeared. It invites small creatures that move silently in the dark. Sleeping close to the earth meant sharing space with all of this. In colder climates especially, people noticed something simple. The earth pulled warmth away from the body. Even with layers of grass and skins, the chill slowly rose upward during the night. Muscles tightened. Sleep grew lighter. The body shifted often, searching for warmth that seemed to fade into the ground. So people experimented. They placed thicker bundles of straw beneath their sleeping layers. They laid branches in loose grids before spreading grass on top. They noticed that even a small space between the body and the earth changed the way the night felt. Air, when trapped beneath, became an invisible blanket. This idea, the value of space beneath the sleeper, slowly became part of the human understanding of rest. The first raised sleeping places were not what we would recognize as beds. They were simple platforms, sometimes nothing more than a frame of wood laid over supports. But they marked an important shift. For the first time, the sleeper floated slightly above the ground. Wood was one of the earliest materials used for this purpose. Branches, logs, and planks were arranged into low frames, sometimes only a few inches high. The wood might be rough, still holding the texture of bark or the marks of simple tools. It was not polished or decorative. It was practical. A wooden platform created distance. Distance from damp soil. Distance from crawling insects. Distance from the slow seep of cold rising through the night. Even a small elevation made a difference. Imagine lying on such a platform. Beneath you, a surface of wood, firm but steady. Above it, layers of straw or woven mats. The air beneath remains cooler, but no longer touches the body directly. The chill is softer now, less immediate. The sleeper feels more insulated, more separate from the earth. This separation changed the feeling of night. There was a subtle sense of protection, not dramatic, not conscious perhaps, but real. The body sensed that it was no longer part of the ground itself. It rested above it in a space shaped deliberately for sleep. Insects were another quiet reason for elevation. The ground is alive with movement, especially at night. Beetles, ants, small crawling creatures follow their own paths in the darkness. A sleeper on the earth might feel the occasional tickle of movement across a blanket or skin. By raising the sleeping surface even slightly, people reduced these disturbances. The wooden frame became a boundary, not perfect, but helpful. It signaled that this space belonged to the human body for the night. Over time, these platforms became more structured. Instead of loose branches, people began to create frames, simple rectangles made from wood, joined at the corners. Across these frames, they stretched materials to support bedding. One of the most important early developments was the use of rope or cord. Ropes made from plant fibers or leather strips were woven back and forth across a wooden frame, creating a flexible surface. This webbing allowed the body to sink slightly, distributing weight more evenly than solid wood alone. It was an early form of suspension. The sleeper lay not on a hard platform, but on a surface that gave just a little under pressure. The ropes creaked softly when weight shifted. The structure moved gently, adjusting to the shape of the body. Above this rope base, people still layered straw, cloth, or skins. But now the experience was different. There was spring. There was subtle movement. There was space for air to flow beneath. The bed was beginning to feel less like ground and more like something made specifically for the body. These early raised beds were still low. Climbing into them was not a grand gesture. But even this small change, lifting sleep off the earth, transformed the night. The air beneath the bed remained cooler and drier. Moisture that gathered on floors did not rise directly into bedding. The wooden frame created a clearer separation between the sleeping space and the rest of the room. In some homes, the area beneath the bed became a place for storage. Blankets, tools, or personal items were kept there during the day. The bed was no longer just a surface. It became a structure with presence. Wood itself brought a new sensory experience. Unlike earth or woven mats, wood carries a different smell. Faint, dry, sometimes slightly sweet, depending on the tree. It creaks gently with changes in weight and temperature. It warms slowly under blankets, holding heat in a quiet way. Sleeping above wood changed the sound of the night. The floor beneath might still be stone or packed soil, but the bed introduced a new layer of quiet structure. Movements produced soft sounds, a rope tightening, a board adjusting, small reminders of the bed's presence. These sounds were not disturbing. They became part of the rhythm of sleep. In colder regions, people noticed another benefit of elevation. Air trapped beneath the bed acted as insulation. Instead of the ground drawing heat directly from the body, the cool air layer slowed that exchange. The sleeper stayed warmer for longer, especially when wrapped in heavy blankets. In warmer climates, elevation also allowed airflow beneath the bed, helping cool the sleeper slightly during hot nights. The same principle, space between body and ground, served different needs in different environments. Raised beds were adaptable. They could be simple or slightly more refined. In some cultures, woven surfaces became more complex, using reeds, grasses, or plant fibers tightly interlaced across frames. These surfaces were firmer than rope, but still breathable, allowing air to circulate. The texture beneath the bedding mattered. It shaped how the body felt supported. It influenced how heat moved through the night. It changed the way sleep settled into muscles and joints. And slowly, over generations, people became more attentive to these details. They adjusted the height of frames. They chose stronger woods. They learned how tightly to stretch ropes or fibers for the best balance between support and softness. None of this happened quickly. There was no single invention called the bed. Instead, there was a long series of small improvements guided by observation and comfort. Each generation inherited knowledge about what made sleep easier, warmer, deeper. And at the heart of these improvements was a simple idea. The body rests better when it is lifted from the earth. Not far, just enough. By the time raised beds became common in many settled communities, the act of climbing onto a sleeping surface carried quiet meaning. It marked the end of the day in a new way. Instead of lying directly on the ground, the sleeper stepped into a space clearly defined for rest. The bed frame, however simple, created a boundary. Inside this boundary, sleep belonged. Outside it, the world continued. The floor, the walls, the cool air of the room. But within the frame, beneath blankets and skins, the body found a pocket of stillness, separated from dampness, insects, and the slow chill of the earth. This separation made sleep feel more intentional, more contained, more protected. And from these early wooden platforms and woven bases, the bed began its long journey toward the layered, cushioned forms we know today. But even now, thousands of years later, the principle remains the same. A bed lifts us slightly above the ground. It creates a small island of warmth and safety. It gives the body permission to rest. Once people began lifting their sleeping places from the ground, another quiet question followed. If the body was to rest above the earth, what should it rest on? The wooden frame created distance. The ropes or woven supports added flexibility. But the surface touching the sleeper, the layer that met skin, bone, and muscle, still needed to be shaped. And so, across centuries and cultures, people filled their beds with the materials they knew best: straw, hay, wool, feathers. Each one carried its own texture, its own scent, its own quiet presence in the night. Let us begin with straw. Straw was one of the most common bed fillings for a very long time. It came from grain harvests. The dry, hollow stalks left after seeds were removed. Light, golden, and plentiful, straw could be gathered in bundles and packed into fabric sacks to form what we might recognize as early mattresses. A straw mattress did not lie flat and silent. It had a voice. When a person lay down, the straw shifted beneath the weight. There was a soft rustling, a dry whisper of stems sliding against one another. It was not loud, not harsh, just a gentle reminder that the surface was alive with tiny movements. The feeling beneath the body was uneven, but not unpleasant. Straw bends slightly under pressure, then resists. Hips and shoulders might find small hollows where the stems parted. Other areas felt firmer, more structured. The body adjusted naturally, settling into the shape available. This shifting created a kind of slow, constant conversation between sleeper and mattress. Turn once, and the straw answered with a quiet sigh. Shift a leg, and the surface rearranged itself softly. Over time, the straw would compress. Areas where a person lay most often would grow flatter, more familiar. The mattress slowly molded itself to the sleeper's habits, though never perfectly. There was also a scent. Straw carried the faint smell of fields, dry, dusty, slightly sweet. In colder months, that smell mixed with wool blankets and the smoke of hearth fires, creating the quiet fragrance of a lived-in room at night. But straw had limits. It could grow brittle. It could break down into dust. It needed to be replaced regularly, to stay comfortable and clean. So people refreshed their mattresses, removing old straw and filling sacks with new bundles, bringing the smell of fresh harvest into the sleeping space. Hay was another common filling, similar to straw but softer, as it included dried grasses and leaves. Hay had a richer scent, green once, now dried, holding the memory of summer meadows. A hay-filled mattress felt gentler than straw, but also more prone to holding moisture. In damp climates, this could make beds feel cool or slightly heavy at night. Still, for many, hay offered a softer surface, a little more yielding beneath the body. Lying on hay, the sleeper felt a subtle cushioning, as if resting on a layer of dried plants that still remembered the shape of wind moving through them. There was quietness in that feeling, a connection to fields and open air brought indoors for the night. The sounds of hay were softer than straw, less rustling, more of a muted shifting, like dry grass brushing against cloth. These small sounds became part of the nighttime atmosphere, familiar and almost comforting. As time passed and communities grew wealthier or more settled, other materials found their way into beds. Wool was one of them. Wool comes from sheep, soft, crimped fibers that trap air easily. When cleaned and packed into bedding, wool created a mattress that was warmer and more resilient than straw or hay. A wool-filled mattress felt denser. The body sank slightly, but not sharply. The surface had a quiet spring, a gentle pushback that supported weight evenly. It did not rustle the way straw did. Instead, it held still, absorbing movement with a muted softness. Wool also carried a faint, natural scent, clean but earthy, a reminder of animals and fields. When warmed by the body, that scent grew slightly stronger, blending with the smell of linen sheets and wooden rooms. Perhaps the greatest gift of wool was warmth. Wool holds heat close while still allowing moisture to escape. On cold nights, a wool mattress felt like a quiet reservoir of comfort beneath the sleeper. It reduced the chill rising from below and created a stable, insulating layer. Sleeping on wool felt less like resting on a surface and more like being gently held from underneath. Then there were feathers. Feathers marked a turning point in the history of comfort. Collected from birds, often geese or ducks, feathers were cleaned and packed into ticking, a sturdy fabric casing. The result was a mattress that could be fluffed, shaped, and softened far beyond what straw or wool allowed. A feather mattress responded immediately to the body. When a person lay down, the feathers shifted and parted, creating a hollow shaped exactly by weight and form. The body sank in gently, supported by thousands of tiny curved structures that moved together like a quiet tide. There was almost no sound, just a soft settling, a faint sigh of fabric as the sleeper adjusted. The surface felt enveloping, warm, and deeply soft. It reduced pressure on joints, cradling shoulders and hips in the ways earlier fillings could not. But feather beds required care. They had to be fluffed regularly to keep the feathers from clumping. In the mornings, people lifted and shook them, letting air move through, restoring their loft. The act of fluffing became part of daily life, a ritual that refreshed the bed for the coming night. The scent of feather beds was subtle, mostly shaped by the fabric casing and the room around them. Clean linen sheets, warmed by bodies and aired during the day, gave feather beds a fresh, quiet smell that spoke of care and routine. Over time, these materials were layered. A rope or wooden base held a straw mattress. On top of that, might sit a wool layer. Above it, a feather mattress for those who could afford such comfort. Each layer added softness, warmth, and insulation. The bed grew taller, deeper, more complex. Climbing into it became a small transition, a movement from standing life into resting life. The height separated the sleeper further from the floor, increasing the sense of enclosure and safety. Sheets too played their role. Early sheets, often made of linen, felt cool at first touch. Smooth but slightly textured, they carried the faint scent of air drying outdoors. Slipping between sheets at night meant a brief chill, followed by warmth as the body heated the fabric. The contrast between cool sheets and warm bedding beneath became part of the nightly experience. It signaled the beginning of rest. Under layers of blankets, the mattress fillings worked quietly. Straw rustled softly when someone turned. Wool held steady warmth. Feathers shifted gently, shaping themselves to the sleeper's body. These materials were not silent, not invisible. They participated in sleep. They responded to movement. They carried scent. They shaped temperature. They created a sensory world beneath the sleeper that was deeply physical, deeply present. And through all of this, the goal remained simple: to soften the night, to warm the body, to create a surface that allowed muscles to release and breathing to slow. Early beds were not perfect. They could be lumpy. They could need regular maintenance. They changed with seasons and materials available. But they represented a long human effort to make rest more gentle, more reliable, more comfortable. Every bundle of straw, every handful of wool, every feather placed inside a mattress was part of that effort. And when the candlelight faded and the room fell into darkness, these quiet materials held the sleeper through the long hours of night, rustling, warming, cradling, until morning returned. For much of history, a bed was not a private island. It was a shared space, not out of urgency, not as a hardship to be endured, but as a natural part of life lived close together. Homes were smaller, rooms were fewer, warmth was precious. And so when night came and the fire burned low, people gathered not only in the same room, but often in the same bed. A shared bed changed the feeling of sleep. It was not solitude, it was presence. The mattress, filled with straw, wool, or feathers, held not one shape, but many. The surface dipped gently beneath the weight of several bodies, forming a landscape of quiet hollows and warm spaces. Blankets stretched across shoulders and legs, rising and falling with the slow rhythm of breathing. The warmth of another person close by was not unusual. It was expected. In colder seasons, this shared warmth mattered deeply. Human bodies became part of the night's insulation, holding heat beneath heavy blankets and within the curtains of enclosed beds. The air beneath the covers stayed warmer longer, a small pocket of comfort against the chill of stone walls and wooden beams. Sleeping close meant feeling the quiet movements of others. A shift of weight, a soft exhale, the faint rustle of fabric as someone turned in their sleep. These sounds were not disturbances. They were signs of life continuing through the night. For children, sharing a bed with parents or siblings meant drifting into sleep surrounded by familiar breathing, familiar warmth. The dark felt less wide, the room less empty. The bed became a shared refuge, a small world where the family gathered at the end of the day. In many homes, the bed was the warmest place in the house. Fires burned low overnight. Windows let in drafts. Floors cooled quickly, but the bed, layered with blankets and shared heat, held onto warmth. It was the center of nighttime comfort, a soft island in a room that might otherwise feel cold and still. This made the bed more than furniture. It became the heart of the home after dark. Even in daylight hours, beds were often large, substantial pieces, wooden frames with curtains or coverings dominating small rooms. They were not tucked away in separate bedrooms, as we know today. Instead, they stood where life happened, in main living spaces, alcoves, or shared chambers. The bed was visible, present, part of daily life. At night, its role expanded. It gathered people in, not in conversation or activity, but in shared quiet. Imagine a small room lit by a single candle. Shadows climb the walls as the flame flickers. A family prepares for sleep. Layers of blankets are lifted, and one by one, bodies settle into the bed. There is no rush. The movements are familiar, practiced. The mattress adjusts. Straw rustles softly. Feathers shift. Wool compresses beneath new weight. The bed responds to each person, reshaping itself slowly into a shared form. Under the blankets, warmth grows. Feet find space. Shoulders brush gently. Someone exhales deeply, already drifting. Another shifts once, then grows still. The air inside the covers warms quickly, creating a small climate of shared comfort. In such beds, privacy was different from what we know today. It was not about separation. It was about familiarity. The presence of others in the night did not feel intrusive. It felt grounding. The mind, half awake in darkness, registered nearby breathing and relaxed more easily. There was reassurance in knowing that others rested beside you, safe and close. In crowded towns and busy households, beds sometimes held more than immediate family. Guests might share sleeping spaces. Servants in wealthier homes often slept in the same rooms as those they served. The bed was flexible, adapting to the needs of the household. Yet even with multiple sleepers, there was a quiet order. Each person had a usual place, a side they preferred, a corner where their body fit best. Over time, the mattress molded itself to these patterns, and the arrangement became part of the nightly rhythm. The bed remembered its sleepers. In very small homes, beds might be built into alcoves or recessed spaces in walls with curtains that could be drawn at night. Inside these enclosed beds, several people might sleep side by side, the curtains holding warmth and muffling sound. Within that small space, the world narrowed. The sounds of the house faded. The darkness deepened. The bed became a room within a room, a private world shared only by those inside. The closeness was physical, but also emotional. Shared sleep meant shared rhythms. People often went to bed at the same time and woke together with the light. The cycle of rest was communal, shaped by daylight and necessity, not individual schedules. There is something deeply human in this shared stillness. Long before private bedrooms and personal mattresses, people understood that rest could be communal, that warmth, quiet, and safety could be created together. The bed, in these centuries, was not a retreat from others. It was a gathering point. It held the last whispers of the day, the fading glow of candlelight, the soft sounds of breathing that continued long after voices had stopped. It was where the household came together in stillness, not for conversation, but for rest. And in that stillness, the bed fulfilled one of its oldest roles, to hold people through the night, not alone, but side by side. By the medieval period, the bed had become more than a raised surface. It had become a structure, a presence, almost a room of its own. Homes in the medieval world were often built from wood stone, or packed earth. Their walls could be thick, but not perfectly sealed. Windows were small. Doors did not always close tightly. The air inside moved gently, especially at night, when fires burned low and the warmth of the day had faded. In such spaces, cold did not rush in dramatically. It seeped, a slow, quiet chill that drifted through gaps in wood, through cracks in stone, across floors and along walls. By the time night settled fully, rooms could feel vast and still, with cooler air gathering near the ground and in corners. And so the bed adapted once more. It grew curtains, bed curtains, often made from heavy cloth or wool, were hung around the frame of the bed, forming soft walls that could be drawn closed at night. These curtains were not decoration alone, they were protection. When the curtains were pulled shut, the bed became enclosed, a small, fabric-walled chamber within the larger room. Inside this space, the air changed. The warmth of the sleeper's body stayed closer. Breath warmed the enclosed air slowly. Layers of blankets held heat, and the curtains reduced the movement of drafts. The difference was subtle, but deeply felt. The bed was no longer just a place to lie down. It was a shelter inside the house. Imagine entering such a bed at night. The room beyond is dim, lit by a fading candle or the last glow of embers in the hearth. Shadows stretch long along the walls. The floor feels cool beneath bare feet. The bed stands nearby, solid and still, its wooden frame rising above the floor, curtains hanging quietly on all sides. You lift the curtain. The fabric brushes softly against your hand. Inside, the mattress waits, layered, familiar, holding the shape of previous nights. Blankets are folded back, inviting. You step in. The curtain falls behind you. Immediately, the space feels different, smaller, quieter, warmer. The sounds of the room become softer, muffled by fabric. The air feels still. The world outside the bed fades slightly, as if you have stepped into a private corner carved out of the night. This sense of enclosure brought something new to sleep: privacy. Medieval homes were often shared spaces. Multiple people might live, work, and rest in the same room. The bed curtains offered a gentle boundary, a way to withdraw without leaving the room entirely. Inside the curtains, you could be alone, or alone with those sharing the bed. Conversations softened, movements slowed. The bed became a place where the outside world could be set aside, even if only by a thin layer of fabric. These enclosed beds also shaped the way rooms looked and felt. Beds were large, often the largest pieces of furniture in the home. They stood tall, with sturdy posts at each corner supporting the canopy and curtains. By day, the curtains might be tied back, revealing the layered bedding. By night, they transformed the bed into a quiet chamber. The bed dominated the space. It was not hidden away in a separate bedroom, as in modern homes. Instead, it stood where life happened, in main rooms, chambers, or shared sleeping spaces. Its presence was constant, a reminder that rest was as important as work. The materials of these beds added to their atmosphere. Wooden frames were often carved or shaped by hand, holding the marks of tools and time. The fabric curtains might be thick wool, linen, or other woven cloth, heavy enough to block drafts, but soft enough to move gently when touched. When the curtains shifted, they made a faint sound, the whisper of cloth against wood. Inside, the bedding layered warmth, straw or wool mattresses, feather beds for those who could afford them, blankets stacked thickly. The enclosed space trapped the warmth rising from these layers, creating a pocket of comfort within the cooler air of the room. The difference was not dramatic, like stepping from winter into a heated building. It was gentle, a small improvement in warmth, a quiet reduction in movement of air, a feeling of being held. This feeling changed the experience of night. Outside the bed curtains, the room remained large and shadowed. The walls held the faint glow of dying firelight. The air moved slowly, touching stone and wood. Sounds traveled: a cough, a shift in another corner of the room, the wind against the outer walls. Inside the bed, these sounds softened. They became distant, as if heard through layers of fabric and sleep. The enclosed space created a sense of separation, not complete isolation, but enough to make rest deeper. It was a psychological comfort as much as a physical one. To draw the curtains closed was to say, the day is over, the world can wait. The bed, with its curtains and layers, became a signal to the body that it was safe to release tension. The enclosure reduced visual stimulation, making darkness more complete. It limited small movements of air that could disturb sleep. And perhaps most importantly, it created a sense of ownership over a tiny part of the night. Within those curtains, the sleeper had a space of their own. In colder regions, these enclosed beds were especially valuable. Thick walls held the day's warmth only briefly. Once fires died down, rooms cooled steadily. The bed curtains slowed that cooling around the sleeper, making winter nights more bearable. In warmer seasons, curtains could still be drawn for privacy, or left partially open to allow airflow. The bed adapted to the rhythms of the year. Over time, the bed in medieval homes became not just functional, but symbolic. It represented stability. A well-made bed with curtains signaled that a household was settled, established. It was often one of the most valuable items in the home, passed down through generations. But even the simplest enclosed bed, made of rough wood and plain cloth, offered the same quiet gift. A smaller world within a larger one, a space where breathing slowed, where muscles released, where night felt gentler. In a room lit only by fading firelight, the bed curtains created shadows of their own. Light touched the fabric softly, turning it into a warm glow from within. The sleeper inside became a quiet shape, held by cloth and blankets, hidden from the open space beyond. The bed became a kind of cocoon, not sealed, not silent, but protective. And inside that cocoon, night passed slowly, breath by breath, until morning light filtered through windows and the curtains were drawn back once more. The small room within the room opened again to the world. But for the hours of darkness, the medieval bed offered something precious and rare, a private, warm refuge in a world that was often cold and shared. Across centuries, the bed became more than a structure of wood and fabric. It became a constant, a quiet place that remained when many other things changed. Rooms changed, houses changed, generations came and went. But the bed stayed where it always had been, against a wall, inside an alcove, behind soft curtains, waiting at the end of each day. Because the bed was not only for sleep, it was for stillness. And stillness is where many of life's quietest moments unfold. Of course, sleep was its most familiar role. Every night, the body returned to the bed, as if following a path worn smooth by repetition. The act of lying down signaled a release, of weight, of thought, of the need to remain alert. The mattress held the body, the blankets gathered warmth, and the mind drifted slowly toward dreams. In sleep, the bed was a cradle for the hours when the world grew distant. But the bed also held people when they were unwell. Illness has always slowed the body, drawing it away from daily tasks and into long periods of rest. In those times, the bed became a place of care, not a place of alarm, but of gentleness. Someone might sit nearby, speaking softly. Water might be offered, a cloth laid cool on the forehead. The bed, layered and familiar, allowed the body to remain still, while others tended to small needs. The room moved quietly around the bed, but the bed itself remained calm. It was a place where recovery could unfold slowly, without hurry. The bed also heard many conversations that did not happen anywhere else. When the day ended and the room grew dim, people sometimes spoke more freely. Lying side by side, wrapped in blankets, voices lowered, thoughts that had been held back during busy hours could rise gently to the surface. Stories of the past, plans for the next day, small worries, quiet hopes. The bed in these moments was a listener. It did not interrupt. It did not demand. It simply held the speakers in its stillness. For children, the bed was often the place where stories were told before sleep. A parent's voice in the dim light, the rhythm of words soft and steady, the feeling of warmth beneath blankets. These sensations became part of memory. Long after childhood, the feeling of being safe in a bed often remains, carried quietly into adulthood. The bed was also present at the beginnings of life. In earlier centuries, homes were the places where many children were born. The bed, already layered for warmth and comfort, became a place where new life entered the world, not in bright rooms filled with strangers, but in familiar spaces, surrounded by known voices. The bed held that moment too, not with drama, but with steadiness. It was simply there, supporting, holding, witnessing. And as years passed, the bed often remained with a person into their later days. As the body grew slower and needed more rest, time in the bed increased. The bed became a familiar landscape of blankets and pillows, a place where the outside world could be observed quietly through a window or doorway. Even when strength faded, the bed offered comfort. It supported the body without requiring effort. It allowed people to remain part of the life around them, listening to the sounds of the house, the voices of family, the quiet movements of daily routines. Through all these stages, sleep, illness, conversation, beginnings, and endings, the bed did not change its nature. It did not become more important or less. It simply remained what it had always been, a place where the body could rest safely. Perhaps this is why beds carry such a deep sense of familiarity. They are tied not only to one part of life, but to the entire arc of it. The bed stands quietly in the background of countless moments, rarely noticed, yet always present. It does not mark time with noise. It marks time with stillness. And stillness is where much of life truly happens. In breaths, in pauses, in the quiet spaces between words. The bed holds those spaces. It holds the weight of the body when strength is low. It holds warmth when the night is cold. It holds silence when conversation has ended. In this way, the bed becomes a symbol not of activity, but of care. Care for the body, care for comfort, care for the need to pause. Even now, centuries later, we return to beds at the end of each day with the same quiet intention our ancestors had: to lie down, to feel supported, to let the world grow distant for a while. The materials have changed, the rooms have changed, the shapes have changed, but the meaning remains. The bed is where life slows down, where the body is allowed to be vulnerable, where warmth gathers, where night passes gently, and through all of it, The bed waits, patient, steady, a silent companion through the many quiet chapters of being human. Night has settled fully now. Outside, the last traces of evening have faded. The sky is dark, wide, and quiet above the rooftops. Inside the house, the air has grown cooler. The warmth of the day has thinned, and the stillness of night has begun to fill the spaces between walls. The bedroom is dim. A single candle burns low on a small wooden surface. Its flame leans slightly, then straightens, then leans again, responding to the quiet currents of air in the room. Shadows drift softly across the walls, long and slow, as if moving in their sleep already. The bed waits nearby. Heavy blankets lie folded back, their surfaces thick and textured. Linen sheets beneath them are cool to the touch, holding the faint scent of air and clean fabric. The mattress, layered and familiar, remembers the shape of many nights before. A person steps closer. Bare feet meet the floor, cool against skin. The boards or stone beneath carry the chill of the late hour. There is no rush. Movements are slower now, guided by the quiet of the room. The candle flame flickers as someone passes, and the shadows stretch, then settle again. Clothing is loosened. A cloak or garment is set aside. The bed feels closer now, like a quiet promise of warmth waiting just beyond the cool air. The blankets are lifted. A pocket of still air escapes, slightly warmer than the room. The person slides beneath the layers, and the bed receives them gently. The mattress gives a little. The straw or wool shifts softly. Feathers settle with a muted sigh. The cool sheets touch the skin first, a brief contrast that makes the warmth to come feel deeper. The body adjusts, shoulders sinking slightly, legs finding space beneath the weight of blankets. The blankets fall back into place. Their heaviness is reassuring. It presses gently, holding warmth close, creating a small, sheltered world beneath layers of cloth. The air inside grows warmer with each slow breath. Across the room, the fire in the hearth is nearly out. Now and then, a small ember shifts, sending a quiet crackle into the stillness. The sound is soft, distant, more memory than noise. The glow from the hearth is faint, just enough to remind the room that warmth was there not long ago. The candle continues to burn. Its light is softer now, no longer bright enough to define every detail. Instead, it shapes the room in warm outlines. The curve of a chair, the edge of a table, the quiet rise of the bed's curtains. Everything feels gentler in this glow. Inside the bed, breathing slows. The body, wrapped in warmth, begins to let go of the day's tension. Muscles loosen one by one. The weight of blankets becomes part of the body's awareness, not heavy, but grounding. The air beyond the blankets is cooler, but inside this small space, warmth gathers and stays. A hand rests on the surface of the blanket. Fabric brushes softly against skin. The sounds of the house grow fewer. A distant settling of wood, a faint movement in another room, then stillness again. The candle flame dips. For a moment, it grows brighter, then smaller. Wax pools at its base, feeding the wick one last time. Shadows waver gently across the walls, then slow as the flame steadies again. The bed has become the center of the room now, not visually, but in feeling. Everything else fades in importance. The world has narrowed to warmth, breath, and the quiet presence of night. Outside, wind moves softly along the walls, too distant to disturb. Inside, the air is calm. The candle leans once more. Its light thins. The flame grows small, then smaller still, until it is just a quiet point of gold against the dark. Then, almost without sound, it goes out. a thin ribbon of smoke rises briefly, pale and twisting, before dissolving into the darkness. The room does not feel empty when the light disappears. It feels complete. Darkness settles naturally, like a blanket over the house. In the bed, the body is already drifting. The warmth holds steady. The sounds of the world have grown soft and far away. Night stretches gently onward, and within the small shelter of blankets and mattress, sleep comes quietly, the way it has for centuries, in rooms just like this one, where cold air lingers beyond the bed, where fire fades slowly, and where the dark feels calm rather than deep. The old bedroom rests, the bed holds its sleeper, and the night moves on, quiet and unhurried, until morning light finds its way back through the window once more. For a long time, beds were built for protection. They lifted the body from cold floors. They kept out drafts. They gathered warmth. Comfort existed, but it was quiet, practical, and shaped by what was available. But over centuries, something subtle began to change. People did not suddenly decide that beds should be soft. Instead, as materials improved and daily life grew a little more stable, attention slowly shifted. Once the bed had become a reliable shelter from cold and dampness, there was room to think about something more delicate: how the body felt after lying still for many hours. This is where softness began to deepen. Straw and hay, once common, slowly gave way in some homes to thicker layers of wool. Wool did not rustle. It held its shape longer. It cushioned more gently beneath the weight of a sleeper. A wool mattress responded to the curves of the body without shifting too sharply. The bed began to feel less like a surface and more like something that received the body. Then came the feather bed, the perina, the feather-filled mattress that changed the feeling of sleep in a quiet but lasting way. Feathers had already been used in pillows and cushions, but when packed deeply into large bed-sized sacks, they created a new experience. A feather bed did not simply support the body, it shaped itself around it. When someone lay down, the surface yielded slowly. Shoulders sank slightly. Hips found a gentle hollow. The spine settled without pressing against anything firm beneath. It felt as if the bed were adjusting in small ways to the sleeper's presence. There was no sudden transformation, only a gradual softening. Feather beds required care. They needed to be fluffed, aired, and turned. In the mornings, people would lift and shake them, redistributing the feathers so they did not clump together. This daily ritual kept the bed light and responsive, ready to receive the sleeper again at night. Over time, beds grew taller. Layers stacked one atop another: a rope base, a straw mattress, a wool layer, and finally a feather bed. Climbing into bed became a small upward motion, like stepping into a nest built above the room. This height separated the sleeper even further from cold floors and drifting air. It also changed the psychology of sleep. The bed felt more distinct from the rest of the room. It was no longer just a raised platform. It was a layered place, built specifically for rest, with softness as one of its quiet goals. Mattresses themselves began to change shape. Instead of loose sacks of filling, they became more structured. Materials were distributed more evenly. Fabrics grew sturdier, able to hold their contents in place for longer periods. The bed surface became more predictable, less prone to sudden lumps or empty spots. Still, these changes were slow. They unfolded across generations, not years. A bed in one century might look very similar to a bed 100 years later, but with small improvements. thicker padding, cleaner fillings, better stitching. Comfort, like sleep itself, arrived gradually. Even as beds grew softer, they did not lose their earlier purposes. They still protected from cold. They still gathered warmth beneath blankets. They still formed a small shelter within the room. But now, when a person lay down, the body was greeted by something gentler. Pressure points eased. Movements became smaller. Sleep could deepen more easily when the surface beneath did not demand constant adjustment. The relationship between sleeper and bed became more harmonious. The bed no longer simply held the body above the ground. It began to cradle it. This shift did not make sleep luxurious in the modern sense. Rooms were still cool. Drafts still found their way through walls. Sheets might still feel cold at first touch. But beneath the blankets, the mattress offered a quieter, more forgiving support. People noticed, even if they did not speak of it directly. They noticed waking with fewer aches. They noticed drifting into sleep more quickly. They noticed that the bed felt welcoming in a way that earlier services had not. And so slowly, softness became part of the bed's identity, not as excess, not as indulgence, but as a natural extension of care. Care for warmth, care for rest, care for the body that had worked through the day. By the time we approach more recent centuries, the bed has changed in feeling more than in appearance. It still stands in a room. It still holds blankets and sheets. But its interior has grown kinder to the sleeper. Springs would come later. Industrial materials would eventually reshape mattresses entirely. But long before that, the path toward comfort had already begun, guided not by sudden invention, but by quiet observation. People simply kept asking in small ways, can this be softer? Can this be warmer? Can the body rest more easily here? And with each generation, the answer moved a little closer to yes. Yet even as beds softened, the meaning of the bed remained steady. It was still the place where the day ended, still the place where warmth gathered, still the place where night unfolded slowly. The materials changed, the purpose did not. And so the bed carried humanity forward, from straw and skins to wool and feathers, always becoming a little more gentle, a little more welcoming, while remaining the same quiet refuge it had always been. The room is quiet again. Night has settled into its deepest hours, and the world beyond the walls has grown still. No voices move through the air. No footsteps cross the floor. The fire has long since faded, leaving only a faint memory of warmth in the stones of the hearth. The bed remains. It does not speak. It does not shine. It simply holds its place in the dark. For thousands of years, this has been its quiet role. The bed has always been there, waiting at the end of the day. No matter how the day has gone, whether it has been long or short, gentle or demanding, the bed waits with the same still patience. It asks for nothing. It offers the same quiet invitation every night. Come and rest. The bed does not change its welcome depending on the hour, the season, or the mood of the sleeper. It is steady in a way few other things in life are steady. When the body is tired, the bed receives it. When the mind is full, the bed holds it until thoughts begin to slow. When the night feels long, the bed offers warmth and softness until morning returns, holding warmth in the middle of the night. This is one of its oldest gifts. Beneath blankets, above wooden frames, above straw or wool or feathers, the bed gathers warmth and keeps it close. The air inside the bedding grows still and gentle. The body settles into that warmth as if into a quiet embrace. Outside the bed, the room may cool. The night air may move slowly through unseen cracks. But inside the small shelter of sheets and blankets, the world softens. The bed becomes a small climate of its own, a pocket of calm, a place where breathing deepens and muscles release their last tension. Across centuries, people have known this feeling, lying beneath heavy covers in winter, feeling warmth gather slowly, listening to the distant sounds of wind or quiet houses, knowing that inside the bed there is stillness. The bed holds that stillness. It does not hurry the sleeper toward morning. It does not disturb the long, gentle hours of darkness. It simply supports, quietly and faithfully. When sleep comes, the bed remains beneath it. When dreams begin, the bed stays steady. When the mind drifts far from the room, far from the house, far from the world itself, the bed continues its quiet work, holding the body safe in the night. This has always been true. From grass laid over earth, to wooden frames with woven ropes, to feather-filled mattresses and layered blankets, the bed has changed its shape, its height, its softness, but its purpose has never wavered: to be there, to wait, to receive the tired body at the end of the day and hold it through the dark. And so, as this story of the bed comes gently to rest, we return to the same image with which we began: a quiet room at night, cool air beyond the blankets, soft warmth gathered close, the bed still and patient, beneath a sleeping body. It has always been there, through cold nights and quiet evenings, through whispered conversations and silent hours, through centuries of changing homes and changing lives, waiting at the end of the day, holding warmth in the middle of the night. And now, as your own breathing slows and the world around you grows quiet, the bed beneath you continues that ancient work, steady, gentle, unchanged in its quiet purpose. The night stretches on, the bed remains, and in that stillness, sleep comes softly, just as it has for thousands of years.